Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Hey, movie lovers, I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson. We are the hosts of the Next Reel Film Podcast.
If you're passionate about films like we are, you'll love our show. Each week, we dive deep into a movie, discussing everything from the story and performances to the cinematography and score.
Not to mention budgets and awards. We have covered iconic series like Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather trilogy, examining themes of power, family, and the dark side of the American dream.
We've explored the works of groundbreaking directors like Catherine Bigelow, discussing her mastery of tension.
We've looked at heist films, great car chases, great years in film, couples on the run, and more.
Our discussions go beyond the surface, examining what makes each film tick. We believe that when the movie ends, the conversation begins.
And we'd love for you to join that conversation. Find the Next Reel Film Podcast on your favorite podcast app or at thenextreel.com.
The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Oh, there you are. I was hoping I'd cross paths with you today. I'd like to invite you to visit the Story Well. It's a place where storytellers of all stripes gather. From improv performers to authors, screenwriters to playwrights, we all tell stories. But we're not here to talk about craft. We're here to make something out of nothing. Each episode of the podcast, your host, that's me, sits down with a creative person, and based on a series of random prompts, we get elements that we make into a story. Will it be a noir novel about King Kong? Or a Broadway musical about JFK? Even we don't know. That's the fun part. But what do you get out of this besides a good time with fun people? Simple. The idea is then yours. That's right. Whatever we come up with, we give it away for anyone to use however they'd like, no strings attached. It's like each episode comes with a free prize inside. The Story Well with Kyle Olson. We'll save you a seat at the table.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Adrian Moment on TrueStory.fm. I'm Ocean, and I'm joined this and every week by the Billy Hoyle to my Sidney Dean in sports movie dissection, Jim Pullen.
I'm loving that. That's funny. I'm your Billy.
So, well, Billy.
What's up, Sidney?
Yeah, exactly. How's it going today?
It's going good. It's going good. Thanks. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing really good today. I recently saw the movie White Men Can't Jump, and in watching that movie, something happened to me that I did not expect to happen. There is a phrase that I've said for years. I don't say it as much anymore, but I said it for quite some time back when I used to watch pay-per-view boxing at my house in Seattle. There were times where you were there, the group of us friends, and we were all hanging out doing that. And especially in Roy Jones Jr. fights is when I remember saying it the most of the times. But there were several other times where I would say something along the lines of, "Hey, let's just knock this bum out and go to Sizzler." And I remember of our group, I was the first one that ever said that. And then every now and again, someone would say it for different fights or different reasons or whatever. And, because we wanted it to be knockout and let's get this fight over with and be done. And it was just a stupid thing to say because who gets excited about going to Sizzler? And I had no memory at all that I got that phrase from this movie.
Never had that connection myself in the times that I was around when that was said or done. And it's crazy. Now, I'm excited. It's crazy that you have that connection because I, too, have the connection when I was rewatching this movie.
Really?
Yes. Yep. So my phrase that I had no idea that was associated to this movie was, "It ain't no thing but a chicken wing on a string." I've been saying that for forever. And I had no idea it came from this movie.
Yeah. So, yes, that is such a 90s phrase right there. So that's great.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I even popped it off in a meeting the other day. But
wow, that's impressive. I honestly I'm proud of your ability to still work that in to conversations now.
It's interesting that you had the same reaction. And it's not like we're watching this together. We're not like doing a Zoom meeting, watching it. Like you're watching it one day, I'm watching it a different day. And you're sharing this with me. And I'm sitting here thinking like, there's no way that you had a phrase, and then being part of that phrase too. Let's go to Sizzler. God, I didn't even know. Didn't even know.
I know. I actually paused the movie and rewound it again to watch that. Jumped it back to watch that scene a couple times to make sure that I was like, did he just say what I think he said? And it's weird too when that happens, because you have that moment where you're like, how does he know I say that? And then you're like, wait a minute. It is more likely that I got it from the movie than someone who wrote that Ron Shelton who wrote this movie heard me say this in a room he wasn't in and then put it in his movie. Now, I like to think that the latter is what happened, but I'm pretty confident it's the former. Like I got it from the movie. Yeah.
I think so too, because I was sitting there and not in the same mindset as you with that, but I was sitting there thinking like, I don't remember ever coining this phrase before the movie, but I don't ever remember it like associating this phrase to that movie. I just remember saying it. Like seriously, I literally probably just said it just the other day in a meeting last week or the week before. So, I mean, it's just, that's just crazy.
Yeah. So, and I think that to summarize, I believe we're both on the same page here. Either we got it from the movie, or what I now starting to think is more likely is that Ron Shelton is tapping our phones in the 90s. And has got this information from us and then put it in his film. So, so basically, anyone that has also gotten pleasure and enjoyment out of that part of this, you're welcome. And since we are now so integral to the movie, why don't we spend a little bit of time talking about?
Did you just say integral? I'm thinking delusional, but that's fine.
No. We are integral to the not only to the plot, but to the verbiage that the characters are using, because it came from us. I think that no one has told me that is false, so I'm going to then believe that it is true.
Okay, let's go with that. All right, okay. I'll go with that. With that.
Okay, awesome. So then why don't we spend a little time and then we'll talk about White Men Can't Jump.
Oh, it is hard work being this good. Oh, it hurts. Baby, give it up, turn it loose.
It's not about black.
I don't mean to brag, but I'm the greatest.
That's because you never saw me.
It's not about white.
Honey, I'm home.
How much money did you make today?
I missed you too.
I'm sorry, honey.
It's about green.
I want to find out how good you are, chump.
Come on, I'm your white shadow.
I have a business proposal for you, as if you don't mind hustling.
What kind of hustle?
$500, baby, and you can pick my teammate.
Give him the chump.
You mean play basketball?
Shut your anorexic, malnutrition, tapeworm having, overdose, Dick Gregory, Bahamian diet drinking ass up. Give me my money. I seen you hustle.
Hey, I've never used no goofy white mother. Hey, who you calling goofy white mother? You goofy.
500 divided by 2. How much do you love me?
I love you infinity.
Oh, Billy, you're so stupid. You should have said I love you infinity plus infinity.
We shoot you, Billy, but first we want the money. There are rules to hustling. There's an ethics involved.
Yeah, that you wouldn't know a damn thing about.
Will you explain to this Gladys Knight the pimps?
It's pips. The pips.
Winning and losing is all one big organic globule.
I hate it when you talk like that. Oh, you got that big Z in your fro, man. What are you, the Black Zorro?
What are you doing?
I'm doing 2 things.
What?
I'm making them mad. Most guys don't play good when they're mad.
Look, you know you're embarrassing me. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing I'm doing.
I only have 4 words for you. White men can't jump.
All right. Other than stealing our lines, what for you is the best part of the movie?
I gotta say, it is some of the jokes. Like, I enjoyed the whole mama joke aspects of it, right? So, mama jokes was a big thing back then. It's still, I don't necessarily find them all that appropriate even then. But it's funny. Like, if you're amongst some good friends, it's good to crack out a good mama joke every once in a while. I've never used mama jokes in a threatening manner or like in during competition or anything like that. But
I don't think your mama jokes are ever threatening, right? They usually are just kind of like they're meant to. Maybe you could have them to insult, a bit and everything like that. But it always seems to be kind of moderately playful, and that the only downside is like if someone does one that's better than yours.
Yeah, no, totally.
having been in these, well, they were at least, they were called snap battles. I don't think I've ever seen anyone legitimately get in a fight over it. You usually have it where, like, kind of like it's depicted in this movie, where they act like they're gonna fight and then they don't.
I enjoy that. I enjoy the playful aspect of it. From a movie perspective, it's an enjoyable movie to watch, and it's entertaining from like a basketball perspective. I enjoy some of the sporty scenes, of basketball happening on the beach and within the inner city and all that. It's some pretty entertaining things to watch from a movie perspective. There isn't a whole lot of content within the movie itself, but I mean, no, like plot content. Like, I think there's a lot of good background. What? I like that. We're gonna have to use that forever. Like, what? Soundbite. The ocean. What? I don't know. I feel like I could just go on wild tangents. There are aspects of the movie that I really do enjoy with some of the backstory. I guess it's just more of like the building of ultimately what this movie is trying to portray from a message perspective. I don't know. What do you like?
I'll start with really two things. And I'm going to start with something that is just a light little throwaway thing that happened at the very beginning of the movie. I do not know which of the Venice Beach Boys did this, but there were three men, and I'm going to shout them out, that played the Venice Beach Boys: Bill Henderson, Sonny Craver, and John Hendricks. I do not know which one was which. I just know that this movie gave me a dude playing air upright bass. And that I have never seen before in my life. And the singing and everything that they did was fine, and that was great. But it was the air upright bass. That to me was, I thought, true to not only what they were doing as far as being in Venice Beach, but then also just I just found that humorous. The real thing for me, as far as what I really like about this movie is, kind of what this movie is really about, right? Well, it's primarily about the choices you make in life and their consequences. It's about struggling to get ahead when you're actually the one holding yourself back. It's about relationships and how much you will sacrifice for another person. And also it's about foods that start with the letter Q. But it's that I think that the story itself and really what I think I like about it and that endures about it is that these characters feel real. They are touching on things that, especially when you listen to it with, modern ears, that a lot of movies don't even want to, broach some of these subjects. This movie comes out with it really on the front, which is, the title of it being, White Man Can't Jump. And really what that title is a thinly veiled statement about the fact that there is a stereotype that white guys can't play basketball. And the one or two that can are like, Larry Bird and,
John Stockton.
Larry Bird, John Stockton, where they were considered good, but none of them were going to dunk. Even though Larry Bird could dunk, but they just none of them were dunking. And so the idea was that they couldn't jump, and they're not going to be as good as a black basketball player, just on, in a sense, genetics, right? Because the initial conceit of the movie, which is which it opens with. When they're playing the street basketball, and then Woody Harrelson shows up, with Sidney, Sidney Dean, and then the Junior, and then I don't remember the other two players that were there because Sidney Dean and Junior. Junior played by Kadeem Hardison, who I've always loved since A Different World. But that they them playing the 2-on-2 basketball with some two other people, and that they Woody Harrelson effectively hustled them because he was really white. I mean, the fact that he looked goofy or he dressed funny for the time was one thing, sure, but really the main thing was that, well, he was white, so obviously then he can't play basketball, and then that he does, and then that becomes the hustle because Sidney Dean sees the opportunity of that to be like, oh, you can pick anyone you want out here, and then of course knowing that they're going to pick the white guy, the worst player, which is like, oh, you have all these black guys around that you can pick, some of which can play, some of which cannot, but there's this white dude, you can have him because he's got to be the worst, and that I guess that overarching part of like how that hustle worked and in the way this movie even dealt with that dynamic, about not judging the book by its cover. I thought it did a really good job of that, and it's a really good job in that even with this movie's faults, I don't know how well something like this would be made today because the remake was god awful. So
I haven't seen it.
You know what? Don't.
Okay.
So don't. I didn't even make it through. I think the trailer was really bad, and in the first 10 minutes, I was like, well, this is just as bad as a trailer, so I'm out. And it was but it's a thing where it's like I don't know that you could make, a movie like this wouldn't necessarily be made now that it starts and opens with that premise. At least I don't think a good one. I mean, I guess that the remake may be making my statement completely false, but the remake wasn't good.
The remake wasn't good. Sorry. No, and those, you're right. I think that message and me saying like, oh, there's not a whole lot of content, there's not a whole lot of plot. There isn't. But the visuals of it and how everything is presented because of the sport of basketball, and the idea that white guys can't play, it does present that, and it's an important lesson. Don't judge a book by its cover. It's very important to understand that. And in any year, we need to understand that we shouldn't be judging anything or anybody by the quote unquote by the cover of your book, and it's an important message, and this movie drives it home.
It does, and I think it does it with not only with the overarching thing, but then even the arguments about Jimi Hendrix and how that is actually the inverse of it, where you assume that just looking at Billy Hoyle, you assume he can't play basketball, and just looking at Sidney Dean, you assume he wouldn't listen to Jimi Hendrix. Now granted that those are two different those are orders of importance that is portrayed in the movie, but it's a similar theme and idea. Forgetting that as a movie. But just as a concept, do you think that hustle would work today?
Like in real life?
Like in real life, if they really tried to do this. Because when this movie came out, you saw that hustle and you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what would happen. But then, as I was wondering, do you think things have changed enough that it wouldn't still happen?
That's a great question. I would think that... I would think, unfortunately, I think it could still happen. Yeah, like you're going to take a look at a Billy, somebody like myself on the side who's trying too hard with a ball in your hand, and be like, yeah, let's see if this guy can play. I think more often than not, you might end up getting a little surprise. There's some pretty interesting social media content around that kind of surprise, where there's like an old dude, he's like 40 or 45, he's a white guy, and all he does is just do these jump shots and these sky hooks, and they're insane shots, but he scores all the time, and I don't think it's a hustle or anything like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it is, but I think it's possible that some situations are going to present itself that somebody's going to take a look at the white guy that's trying too hard with a ball in his hand at a basketball court and be like, let's see what this guy's got.
It would still happen, and honestly, the reason I think it would still work is that the NBA is always going to be the hallmark and benchmark of where you view kind of how you view basketball and how you view basketball players. And that when this movie came out, Larry Bird was still playing. He was near the end of his career, but he was still in the league. And in the NBA today, there is no Larry Bird. There are good white players, but they're European. There's not like if you're in a street ball in Venice, California, and an American, the guy there is obviously American. He talks, you can tell he's American. An American white player, there really isn't anyone like that now. There was a while there where when Kevin Love was playing with LeBron James with the Cleveland Cavs, he would have been kind of the best American white player in the NBA. But like right now, there are some here and there, but there's no current Larry Bird. So I think that the hustle would still work.
See, now I'm thinking about it, and I'm wondering, like, would it work in the sense of like a pickup game? Yes. Would it work if there is money online? Like, if you're saying like, hey, I got 500, let's do this, and the other guy's like, okay, I got 500, and the dude that first initialized the bet and says, kind of like Sydney says, like, hey, you could pick anybody here, right?
Yes.
And in every situation, they picked the goofy white guy or the geeky white guy. It didn't matter how they explained it. Didn't matter if he was coming down, down from the train from Watts. They picked him from like a half block away. Right?
That was the interesting part. They picked him and he wasn't even there, right?
Right.
And that to me, isn't there a way where that should have been a red flag, right?
Yeah.
For them that he accepted that because that is a scenario where Sydney could have easily said, look, he's not even here, so he doesn't count. We don't even know that he's coming here. I mean, yeah, he had a basketball in his hand, so I guess you knew he was coming. But, like,
Right.
he's not even there. And the fact that Sydney was still like, oh, okay, then that should have been the red flag of, hey, this is a hustle. Although, now that I'm thinking through that scene, that was the one where the three of them hustled Billy.
Right.
So, yeah.
So maybe they knew, and they were like, whatever. It doesn't matter who you bring. We're
no,
gonna.
They knew.
Yeah,
they knew because he was playing just bad enough to not win.
I think definitely if it was just pickup, it would work. But if there's money on the line, I think somebody's going to be calling BS and be like, no, there's a hustle here. Something's good about this goofy white guy over here.
Okay, well then I think that you are ascribing more benefit of the doubt than I am with the people with this.
I mean, I kind of wish we could put it to test. I wish I was good at basketball so we can be like, well, let's go put this to test. I guess technically we could put it to test in that basically the test would just be, are you picked? Right, because we would still lose in this scenario probably because I'm not good at basketball. I always wanted to be good at basketball, but I'm not good at basketball. Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I always wanted to be good.
I'm okay at passing. I can rebound. I'm just not good at basketball. My only aspiration when everyone wanted to be Jordan, I wanted to be Dennis Rodman because I was like his style of basketball was one that I was like I can emulate those skills. I obviously don't do them that well, at least as well as Dennis Rodman did, but like I could, I can rebound, I can assist, I can play some defense. I can do that.
I enjoyed watching it and tried to play it. I'm horrible, so and I'm white and I can't jump. So I mean, I can prove that stereotype for sure. I got like negative vert. It's cool.
Yeah. Okay. So, the other thing about this movie that I think is interesting in the way that it's portrayed is what appears to be a real gambling addiction. That Billy's character basically gambles in odd ways. In that he gambles in a sense where he takes time, like the early hustles where they win money and they're doing well and all that's great. But then as it finally gets good, I mean, yes, once they get up to $1,700 in the first round, they get hustled and he gets hustled and they take his money. Okay, that happened. But then even beyond that, then when when the wives get together and figure out that they're going to play in a tournament, which really is a great scene, by the way.
Yeah.
It seems to be kind of true to the characters that are being portrayed here in that these are grown men that are, in a sense, taking care of their lives, but they're not all the way mature. Part of that, of course, is, all the way in a sense, not only mature and also that they have little things that they would need help in as far as just getting their act together, completely together, especially with how Woody Harrelson's running from two mob brothers because he didn't throw a game, and that was like one thing where he had this situation where all he had to do was throw a game and he didn't throw the game, and so then now they're on the run trying to not die, but but anyway, that tangent aside, that how Billy's constantly takes different areas of where I have a win. He gets hustled. They get into the tournament. They do the tournament. They win. And then he has money that he's going to go back and they're going to celebrate. And this, he has his $2,500 from it, and then decides for no reason in the car ride on the way of the car ride home to say, oh, I can dunk and I'm going to prove it to you. And I'll bet my money against your money that I can dunk.
Yeah.
And then he loses it. From there, going through getting Gloria back, because Gloria then leaves him. She gets him into Jeopardy, which we got to talk about Jeopardy. But she gets into Jeopardy, and then in effect wins her back, and he's now won again. Things are going good. Things are okay, and then he makes a choice where he then loses her again. He makes a choice to then play that last tournament, help Sydney's family out, and then he loses her again. And then in the end, he now wants to bet their winnings on. Oh, I don't remember what it was. It was another game. Like he wanted to play him in one-on-one at the end. In the end credits, Billy is asking him to do that, and he's going to gamble that what he just won on that game. The reason why I think it's an interesting portrayal of gambling addiction is that clearly is his problem in the sense that he has a gambling addiction, and really impulse control, but that it isn't pervasive in everything he does. What he does is he kind of picks the worst moment to do the wrong thing. Because before then, like with all the various hustles and all that, he was doing that. All those were working successfully. They were building up money, building up a nest egg,
putting money in the jar.
Putting money in the jar. You know, like the relationship was going well. You know, they were doing, you know, just all these things that were going really well. And then he just picks these moments of where things could go just even a little bit better to get them, you know, closer to even or closer to ahead. And that's when he sabotages himself. And normally when when you depict gambling, these other movies, when you see gambling addiction, it's pervasive in them throughout.
Yeah, and it's almost like what he's trying to do, and it's not depicted there. And I'm not trying to justify like a gambler's brain or an addict's brain or anything like that, but it's almost like I have this money now and I could make it bigger if I do this. I can do so much better if I can come home with 5,000 rather than 2,500. And I think also some of it is his ego, because part of it is, at least in the character, Billy is always going to bet on himself. Like, he believes in himself, you know? Yeah. And so I don't know if that's hand in hand with the addiction gambling aspect plus his ego, or the ego is a byproduct of all that, or vice versa. However, that circle of life may end up working. But, you know, from a character perspective, I think he's also trying to do it with good intentions too, because he wants to do good for Gloria. So he wants that 2,500 to be 5,000 for he and her. But it's the ego and the gambling addiction that just takes over. That's what I think. I think there's that little tinge of like that good aspect in his soul. And you know, shout out to Sydney for trying to stop him in that moment in the car. He's like, man, you don't want to do this. Go home, go and get your girl a pretty dress to go on to Jeopardy.
Exactly.
And save yourself. Like, why do you keep doing this? You know, and he tried to stop him. So, I mean, that's a good friend. That's a good friend for trying to stop and recognizing these bad moments and these constant repeatable bad situations that he puts himself in. But I'm thinking that he's got a little bit of goodness in him. And he's like, I just want to do this for us. And I'm trying, because I know I've got that ego. I know I got that shot.
I think we're being generous to him in different ways. And okay, let's talk about Jeopardy.
Yes. Yeah, let's talk about Jeopardy.
The Jeopardy thing kind of is brilliant. And the reason why I think that is that it created a scenario of where this movie needed to have Gloria, that character, for Billy's entire arc of not only what he's doing hustling, but then how his personal life is going, that to win her back, and then to ultimately lose her. You know, for all that to happen, Gloria had to be in this movie. And to me, the genius of the Jeopardy angle was it gave her a reason to be in the movie. You know, you weren't just looking at her the whole time like, oh, she's just the girlfriend. I mean, you know, there is, you know, like any movie like this, they're going to have a lot of where, you know, yeah, she's the girlfriend. She's not, you know, the main star that we're following, but it gave her, you know, more to do and more to be, because she had like a through line that was effectively independent of him. I mean, it wasn't totally independent of him, because, you know, we were going to use the money to help solve our problems, but like, you know, that it was her thing. And then the aspect of getting her on it, because, you know, she by and large was just waiting for Jeopardy to call, and and they didn't, and that in effect, while we've been talking about the things about Billy's character that are kind of bad, in a sense, the one thing that he did that is good, if not great, was in doing this, he networked to the point where he could get her on the, you know, they were saying get her on the stage, the sound stage, which I guess that meant she just got to walk in and then they auditioned her there. I don't know how that.
I was trying to figure out, like, how do you get from security guard getting you in to being on the show?
I didn't. I was going to just accept that and move on. So that was my thought there. But you know that you know, in effect, his hustling and everything he's been doing created the network where then he could then do that and then get, you know, get her in there, especially at that time and everything. He had friends that would help him out, and then get her on the show, and then she do it, and then she did, you know, amazingly well. Like, all the work she had paid off and everything made it where she's not just the girlfriend that's there to support her man. She actually has, you know, agency or smarts and stuff like that in this moment, because, you know, not everybody can win at Jeopardy. Like, it's not, you know, that is not the easiest thing in the world to do.
No, especially she pulled down $12,000. So, you know, that's a lot of money. That's about like $24,000 in today's terms. But, you know, it's interesting though, with the whole networking aspect of Billy getting to that scene where I think it was Robert is the guy's name. That's the dude that
that's the security guard.
Yeah, that's the security guard.
Yeah.
Was it Robert? Yeah. But
sounds good. Let's go with it.
Okay. Yeah, let's go with that.
Let's go with that.
So I apologize, anybody. I mean, you can correct us if you want, but I'm sorry. But in that moment, his networking and with Sydney and Sydney's help to get there, he still has to bet on himself to be able to do it. Because remember, it was the car, or he gets Gloria on there, right? And it's beyond like a half court shot, or at least that's what it looks like. It was probably like a 2/3 court or something like that in between the buildings or whatever. But it's still interesting though, because all of his hustle got him to that moment. But then the home court ask was, oh, you got to do this crazy J hook, sky hook all the way to that other side. And you're gonna bet your car, as a contingency. Otherwise, she's gonna get onto Jeopardy. And then the whole I was questioning that too. I'm like, how do you just all of a sudden just show up and now you're on Jeopardy?
I didn't know that, and I just went with it. It was great. It was fine. She's on it. She's on it, and she did well.
She's there. She's there. And so, but do you think it would be different though if like she had a different motivation? Because like her only part in the movie was to help support in like a physical and mental way and being a loving girlfriend. But I mean, she didn't have a job. She didn't have anything else other than she was studying for Jeopardy. Yes. And they were saving money. But I mean, they didn't mention anything. So I'm assuming that she didn't have a job. So she was a stay at home. I hope, fingers crossed, Jeopardy's going to call. Would it be different if she was like doing something different?
You mean like if she actually had a job? You mean like that? Or do you mean
like a job, or if she was like taking care of a kid or something like that? Like because I was thinking about that as you were sitting here talking about it, and I was like, I mean, she definitely does help with the arc. I completely agree with you. But like her whole purpose within the movie was to support him, yes, but supporting him as like a supporting character, but her character itself was just ultimately there to eventually get on Jeopardy.
The answer to your question is I don't know. It would definitely depend on what that is, because the reason I think that the character of Gloria exists is to create for Billy, and then I think this is also true for Rhonda to Sydney. Rhonda is Sydney's wife, in that it is to make these guys more fuller. I don't think more fuller is the correct way to say that. I think it's correct to say it is to make these guys more full human beings, and that
more rounded individials.
I'm not trying to body shame them. I'm just saying they're
square them up.
Exactly. So, her purpose was for you'd view them as more than just these basketball street hustlers, because if they were just guys that were hustling people for money, I mean, it's not illegal what they're doing, but I don't think you would root for them the same way, because you would just think of them as like, well, you're just fleecing people for their money. Why don't you go get a real job, instead of doing this, so by having the other aspects of it, it helped create that. And then giving her the desire for Jeopardy made it where it's okay, well, she has this thing she wants to do. So there's that, because yes, you are right that if you really step back and look at it, because she didn't seem to have a job or anything, that means that whatever he was making a hustling, at least part, if not all of that, was, or a good chunk of that is going to food, rent, clothes, whatever they need to survive. And then they can save the rest, and that there is that aspect of it. But I think that's, and I think that the reason, so because of that reason, and because that the character, I think, exists just for that purpose, for the humanity part of Billy's arc, then it works. But if she had, like, a kid would overly complicate it. Yeah. And I think that because if they have a kid, I said that, I was like, nope. Yeah, if they have a kid, Billy is not a sympathetic character anymore.
No, and then you're running away from these guys who are like trying to kill you because you didn't throw a game and you owe somebody money. I mean, I'm sure that that does exist in real life, anyways. But from a story and movie perspective, No, I was just wondering what your thoughts were, because it was like, on this rewatch as an adult, I'm watching it and I'm like, well, what are you doing? Like, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, you brought me money, right? And she opens up the jar and puts the money in the jar. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? You're sitting here amongst all these books, like hoping for Jeopardy to give you a call.
Yeah, and there's also the other aspect of it, which I wonder if it is of the time where there, the success or wealth in some ways could be judged. Well, really, you could judge it this way now, in that, if you're able to provide for your family in a sense where your wife doesn't have to work, then that's a good thing, and it's like a sign of success. Because Rhonda didn't work either, and now Rhonda wanted to work. And Rhonda was Sydney's wife, played by Tyra Farrell, who was actually great. Her role was not as consequential as Rosie Perez's Gloria was, but I mean, there's still the performances they both put in, I think, were great portrayals of the wives of these type of men, because there's an aspect of where you have to be accepting, but only to a certain point, because you can't let them run over you, because that'd be too far. But you have to you kind of have to deal with, like, they're going to go play basketball now and do that thing. But she didn't have a job, and she wanted a job. But Sydney was always like, "No, I don't want you working because I'm taking care of you." Right? Which is,
I got all the jobs. He said,
"I got all the jobs." Exactly. Yeah, and that was the thing also with Sydney, where he had so many jobs. That he had the, there was parts of it where because he had the construction job and it was like a construction, painting, and roofing. Yeah. So he had all these jobs, and so then there was a part of it where their financial straits weren't as obvious to me as Billy and Gloria. Billy and Gloria, I get that. There wasn't some other source of income coming, for them. Now, it could have been that these other three jobs only helped out in terms of, feeding the child. But then in the loan meeting, when they're discussing it, that comes up with Sydney's job, he is speaking as if he is the owner of these businesses. Now, and he could potentially be an independent contractor of a kind, but then, a single person, couldn't do larger jobs of this. They would need, they could hire subs, but you'd need that. So then it implied that he would be high enough up that this should be able to support the family. But I just didn't, that was one of those things I didn't really fully follow through the movie.
Yeah, neither. Like when he was negotiating that contract with somebody to do like stucco on the house or something and do everything else, and he's like in his office at the taco stand, right? Because I was wondering the same thing too when that scene was going, and I was just figuring, okay, well, he's just going to go and hire up a bunch of buddies and be like, hey, here's some cash, we got to go do this job.
Correct. And also the whole job could have been under the table.
Could
be under the table at a lesser rate.
Lesser rate, yeah.
Yes, because the whole my office is in this taco stand does make it sound like, well, maybe this isn't a fully legitimate business. They don't. There's no exposition about that, so you don't really know. But it does seem like there might be something. There could be something a little shady about it. But you love Sydney so much that it doesn't matter. You're like, no, it's Sydney. It's fine. He'll be fine.
But since we were talking about the wonderful ladies that these men are, married to and seeing, and they're very strong, independent women that these guys need. Let's talk about that conversation that the two ladies had when the $1,700 got hustled away from them when they were playing in Watts, and the $1,700 went away, and Gloria was obviously upset, and she wanted to go and talk to Sydney and try and get that money that I think she said, like, you stole from us, and then the two ladies went off and talked and had a cup of coffee. And it was, I thought it was an interesting conversation. I liked the tempo and the temperament of it. That there was like, nope, they were standing their ground together, but they came upon an equal agreement to be able to get the guys go out, get motivated, and go play in that tournament. But what would you think of that?
Well, there is of the lines that I remembered from that movie, even the first time I watched it, I've always never forgotten, was the whole when Rhonda says, I want to get out of Vista View, because there's no Vista, there's no view, and there definitely is no Vista of no view. Whatever he says. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Vista, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that, I do remember that. And I think that it was a great way of them both, in a sense, it's a great scene for them to both show what their strengths are in their relationship, and also their strengths as people, in that they are with their respective men in this struggle, and that they are going to fight for them in the ways that they can. The solution, I think, was it worked. I think the solution was in service of the movie. Because the basic idea is, I don't know if I don't know what it costs to get into this tournament. They don't really mention that.
Oh, good question. Yeah. Because you can't just show up for a tournament that's going to pay out money without paying to get into the tournament. Exactly.
Or something, or you have to do something, there's something, but the fact that they came up with that, I think it was in service of, it helped to be in service of the movie. It was the scene itself was good, but I think the results was in service of the movie to get them in a scenario where they are, playing basketball in this tournament, and then doing, and demonstrating through the movie how good of a team that they are. So
yeah, no, I agree. I like that. Yeah, I like that. You've played that very well. Said that very well. Played that like we're playing basketball.
Yes, exactly. Well played. So yeah. So then since we are all talking about the ladies, and let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
I don't think there is a true Adrian moment in this film, even with these strong performances, because there's no scenario really where at some point in time that these men are going off and doing what they're doing, that they aren't receiving support from their wife or girlfriend. The closest thing to one to me is also what I think is the penultimate reason for the Gloria character to be there, which is the last hustle. And the last hustle of where Sydney and Rhonda are robbed, and Sydney needs to get into this. It's not a tournament. Sorry, Sydney needs to get into a game because Duck and I don't remember the other guy's name, but Duck and whatever the
Duck and Big something. Or...
Duck and Big John or whatever. Anyway, they are playing 2-on-2 games. For whatever reason, it costs $2,500 to get in. It's as if they're playing for $2,500 a piece. If you bring that and you're willing to gamble that, we'll play you, and then you can prove if you're the best or not. And so it's not really a hustle in that way. Really, it's we need to pay this much money to get into this game, and then we'll win that much money back. And so in doing that, though, that was after Gloria had won in Jeopardy. Their lives were going in a much better direction. Really, she won enough money, at least before taxes. She won enough money to pay off his debt. But then, gave him the $2,000 to get clothes, to then get a job interview to change his life and to, become more of a normal, upstanding citizen. When Sydney comes and presents him with this game to then help his family because they were robbed and all that, the moment where Gloria just says, I love you, Billy, but if you do this, then we're through. If you take the $2,000 and go gamble it, we're through. And then he basically says that he has to help out his friend. His friend helped him out. What is he supposed to do? He doesn't want to he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He promised him, I promised you, because he helped me and all that. And so he has this whole logic. And then when she realizes that this is who he is, because the time from before when she left for a bit, it was not it happened, it's you happened. And so in effect, you were happening again. And she loves him, but she just recognized that he wasn't right for what she wanted for the rest of her life. And then she just rollerblades away. And that's honestly another little thing about the movie that's so very 90s. It's like, oh yeah, rollerblades were very common then. Now it's like, who's rollerblading away? But okay.
Everybody had rollerblades,
right? So and so in that moment where she then in a sense discovers her agency and decides that, okay, I accept you, I love you, but I'm going to do what I think is best for my life. It's a great scene, and I think that it creates the fullness of her character in that moment. That is when she's really gone through a complete arc. It's not an Adrian moment because she's leaving. But the fact that she's leaving, you're also thinking, hey, this is what's best for her.
Yeah, maybe it's Adrian adjacent. It's not Adrian in the sense of what we're trying to seek for, but it's her Adrian moment. How about that? It's like her own realization of her own Adrian moment of like, okay, enough of this. I'm done. You know, because that scene is important. I want to rewind it just a little bit further back as they're leading into that scene. You know, she's rollerblading and you know, they're talking, and she's like, okay, if I can get 12,000 a week, you know, and she's like working out the math for planning on, I'm going to be coming back. She's like, you know, that's like 88 grand, you know, in like 1 month or whatever is how she's working out the math. And then, you know, and they're talking about like their future together. Mm-hmm. And then Sydney comes up, you know, and says, you know, hey, we got to go do this. And he's like, oh, hey, you know, I promised her and I promised him. And she gets upset and she's like, I don't even care about the money. I want you, Billy. I want to be with you. I don't care about the money. And it's, I don't know. I think I like that moment in that scene, to your point, because it's like a huge turning point, because earlier throughout the whole movie, it's always just talking about the money, and just moments right before that, they're talking about their future. Now they're talking about positive money in their pocket, and they're both happy. Whereas the previous conversations was always like, people want money from us. And now they're talking about their future, that they have lined pockets in their minds. And he still just shows, and it's not, I mean, I guess it is a gamble, because he's taking his $2,000 for all of his new drip that he's going to go out and buy.
He is. Well, it is a gamble, because they could lose.
Yeah, no, that's true. It could be. Yeah, no, yeah, they can. And, you know, so he just continues to show his bad habits. And like you're saying, you know, she's onward and outward. And yeah, so there's really no true Adrian moment. If anything, that is like her Adrian moment, like I'm saying, but it's not like the true Adrian moment for which we're looking at. The next one for me was like the scene where the ladies are talking in the bath, excuse me, in the kitchen, you know, and they come out. Like, that's close. That's close. And that helps, you know, get them into that next level and be able to show that they are teammates, right. You know, because they're sitting there in the living room and they're arguing with each other, and then eventually like, they're like, okay, yeah.
Well, then a basketball game comes on, and then they're hanging out and they're fine.
Right, exactly.
They didn't stay mad, and so it did provide where it seemed like a solution to get them back together and to get them playing basketball together again. But you know, Billy seemed to have gotten over the hustle pretty quickly when they were watching the Lakers game.
And then I just found it interesting, like when they get to the tournament, like Billy's character just completely changes. Like, you know, he's talking shit right away, and they're not even playing yet.
Yes, I think so. But then I accepted the explanation. Did you think it was something different other than he just believed that getting them mad would make it where they could beat them? Because that was with Dwight the Flight and Willie Lewis. You know, they were the main two. They were the only ones to worry about, because when right. Sydney's giving them the rundown, these guys don't matter. They're nothing. Now these two we need to be concerned with. And so his explanation for it was that he wanted to make them upset so they wouldn't play as well. So did you not accept that as the reason, or do you think it was something else?
I kind of think it was something else. I think.
What's that?
It was Billy feeling free. Like, he's no longer a hustle. They are now a team, right? So now he can go ahead and freely talk whatever he wants to talk. But I think he's also a little heated too, left over from their previous, you know, their previous strife of, you know, the $1,700 and all that stuff. And he's feeling a little free, and he's, you know, hey, I'm going to talk about this. You know, maybe there is something about talking enough crap that you get somebody all mad and you get them all up in their heads. But I don't know. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking it was more of like, Billy is free now. He's not the hustle. He's not the great white hope of the hustle, you know? Now he's just the white dude playing with his buddy, and he's just talking crap. And Sydney's like, what the hell is coming out of this guy's mouth all of a sudden? Like, just stop. Like, this isn't you, you know? But then later, Sydney says, you know, you're all calm, cool, collective on the court, you know, like when they're getting all ticked off at each other, you know, and it's like, well, that's not calm, cool, collective.
How would you recommend this movie to someone now?
Oh, I think that's a tough recommendation. I think you have to kind of like probe a little bit. Like, okay. Have you ever seen this movie? Are you, you know, easily offended at mama jokes, other racist jokes, other stereotypes about races? If you have never seen the movie before and you get offended by these things easily, then no, don't don't watch it.
Well, I guess let me. There's a question that you brought up there that, you know what? I'll start with my own answer to your question, and then I'm going to ask you a question about what you just said.
My question.
Okay,
My question.
I'm going to answer my own question, then I'm going to ask you.
Oh, you're going to answer your own question. Okay,
exactly. Yeah. Okay, so this is like, it's a time loop. Like I'm going to answer my question that I asked you earlier, and then I'm going to answer that one, but then ask you one that you're going to answer that I may answer, but I may not answer, and you may answer it again. Follow that.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting on a spaceship for that one. All right, let's go.
Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, I think that as well. It's a thing of where I struggled with it was anyone that was alive at the time and or saw it, in the past, as far as, seeing it before in the past, there's a lot of great things about it, to then say that, hey, this movie actually has more to it than you may think as far as this regular comedy that it was. But then if you saw it back then, I while it was funny, it was always more than just a comedy. It wasn't, it wasn't something where you're just like, oh, this was funny, but I don't remember any of the story. There was a lot to this movie then. I think there's a lot to, and if you were alive at that time, I think that you could still appreciate it because there would be a lot of cues and signals and things that would be familiar to you and that you would have known or you'd recognize from the time. And they'd be like, oh, that'd be cute. And so you'd have this little kind of nostalgia moment. I don't know how well it would play for anyone that it has not seen it before. One of my sons saw it, loved it. The other one saw the trailer, was like, I have no interest in ever seeing this. It feels 32 years old, more than other movies. It feels that way, and so then you get to where it's like, well, I don't know if I'm not experiencing nostalgia. I don't know if I like that or not. The whole like that, saying that there was racist jokes in this. So there is the underlying statement of the racism about white men can't jump in the title. And that, in a sense, this movie then works in some ways to disprove it. Now, disproves it in terms of the fact that what that term really means is that they can't play basketball, not that they can't physically jump, because they don't disprove that because he can't physically jump, because even in the end when he dunks that ball, that's a 9.5 foot hoop there. That was not a 10-foot regulation hoop, so he could not actually. So Woody Harrelson can't dunk. So just in case if you want away from this movie thinking Woody Harrelson can dunk, I'm telling you now.
At that time, he couldn't. No.
At the time, no. Well, I look. He didn't get any younger, so I don't think if he couldn't do it then, I don't think he can do it now. What about it to you came across as racist?
Well, that's a good question. Even though I said, there's some racist I guess I'm thinking of it more of like in some of today's sensitivity, some folks may not like some of the comments that are made. I wasn't offended or anything like that. But to your point, from like a nostalgic perspective, if you grew up in this era, I mean, it was a great movie, and there was none of the things that were said or done necessarily offended me then or even offended me on a rewatch.
I think you could do this movie mostly word for word and then not have to change anything.
Right.
Partly because they don't make that many pop culture references, and the ones they do reference are NBA players, which you can reference, Jordan, until we're 100 probably. You can reference, Magic and Bird, and outside of that, there wasn't that many pop culture references. Jeopardy's going to be on long after we're all dead.
Right.
That was one of the things that impressed me about it, was I thought that it was written in a way that it went to the line of things, but it wasn't anything that even now it would be canceled. Because I get what you're saying with that, because I really was even concerned when I was watching it, going like, let's see how do I perceive this movie now? And then I just was very surprised that I had more cringeworthy moments or more of you can't do that anymore when I was watching Bring It On than when I was watching this movie.
One thing that I was watching the movie and found quite interesting was that the N-word really isn't used in the movie at all. I want to say like maybe they said it like once or twice. Wesley Snipes says to Billy like once, he said, "I can't believe how cool you are with the N stuff on the court." Or somebody says something like that to Billy. And that's the only time that the N-word is used.
While it probably would have been true to the characters at the time, at least the black ones doing that, I think that if that happened, or if you put the N-word in this movie a lot, then I think it would change the tone.
Right.
It would change the tone to something different, where this is, I think, trying to be more palatable and subversive about the racial issues that it's discussing versus, if you have that in there, then it can become too distracting. It can also become a thing where you're like, well, how come they can all say it to each other, but Billy can't? So maybe Billy's not being fully accepted. And it's like, well, we know why they can say it and Billy can't. I think you'd have a tonal shift that would be significant.
Is it because of the time? Like in the 90s, was the N-word not used as much as it is now? Like if you listen to rap in the 90s, it's not even said that often. But now, like, there's some rappers that I'll listen to and I'm like, oh my God. Okay, I got it, dude.
When NWA came around, which I mean, it's in the title, then it became much more prevalent. They were less concerned with being mainstream. Most rap before that was trying to cross over. You're not going to cross over with using that word all the time, and so NWA didn't care as much, and they were able to cross over without it. I mean, they called themselves NWA, so then therefore they were already starting with that. And so after that, and after they became big, then you started hearing other rappers that would say it more conversationally. So speaking as a black man, it is common. I mean, some of my friends, I will say it to each other liberally, and it's fine. Obviously, white people don't say it to me, and I don't say it to white people because that doesn't seem right. But when my friends, if I'm talking to some of my black friends, and then we say, yeah, it happens. And so it would have been moderately, I think it would have been relatively true to the characters, in that if they spoke that way, that would be a lot of how they talked. But I think then as an entertainment vehicle and as a movie, it would have given it a very different tone. It's a better movie that can get made, especially at that time, without it.
So not to sound like a stereotype, but do you think that if they would have used the N-word more in certain situations, would the quote unquote street basketball been more culturally true to how people may speak to each other on a court in a street situation like that?
Yes, they would use the word more, but they would also use a lot of other insults more.
Right.
The insults in this movie and even the your mama jokes in this movie were kind of tame. They weren't soft. They were more funny than anything else. If you let them actually go and say what they would actually say, it would have been much harsher language, a lot more profanity. Yeah. The N-word aside, they weren't using, they weren't saying
no F words,
a lot of the other
F
words. There's not a lot of profanity in the movie in general. Yeah. And so in that scenario, there would be every third word would have been the F word. Given at the time that you're trying to make a movie that is going to make money and have crossover appeal, I don't think you can portray the way they would actually talk that way. I think you just need to go with the spirit, especially given that piece of it, like how they talk to each other on the basketball courts and everything, is not important for the story. It's kind of important, right? But it's not the main thing. And so if you put that much on it and did that, it would overshadow the rest of the story that you're trying to tell.
No, I was just wondering, and I was kind of thinking about it from that perspective, especially like when you dig in to like the shooting of the movie and some of the scenes, like when they're in Watts, that's actually Watts, but they had a whole gang crew go in and make sure that all the gangs were cool with where they were shooting, because that's gang territory, and that was like some gangs like basketball court, and they had to make sure that everybody was going to be cool if they were going to shoot, that shooting of film was going to be the only thing that happened, and nobody was going to get like all pissed off and see it as like a territory takeover or an opportunity for another gang. So it was like, okay, well, I mean, if these are the streets of LA, these are some of the harshest streets in California that they're playing basketball in, and in the movie, I'm like, okay, well, are they portraying street basketball, or are they presenting us an entertainment value with using street basketball as like the venue or as the vehicle for part of that, for that entertainment?
Unquestionably the latter.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, you're right. It's LA 91. The Crips and Bloods are a big deal at this time.
No, and I agree. I don't think presenting more foul language or presenting the use of the N-word would provide more value to the movie.
Man, Jim, it is always great to talk about movies with you. If you really enjoyed the show, please become a supporting member at thenextreel.com/join. For $5 a month, you will gain members-only access to bonus show content for this and many other shows in the Next Reel family of film podcasts. like, rate, listen, and most importantly, share this podcast with anyone you know that loves sports and movies.
Share it.